Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And the NBA is upside down. Some massive trades happened while I was fast asleep here on the West Coast. I don't think we're going to be talking about anything impacted by those trades necessarily, although the Lakers will be without Russell Westbrook moving forward. But we do have 4 games for you guys tonight, so we're going to take a look at a couple of those and our player props as we're doing each and every weekday, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have all of our great written content for you and our odds finder tool that you can use to make sure you're getting the best odds available from all those U.S. sports books giving you guys NBA bets this season. Nate, let's get into this 4-game slate and then talk about our first game, which is the Magic hosting the Nuggets.
Yeah, and the Nuggets are minus 6.5 here in Orlando with a 232 total. Then we got Bulls +1 at the Nets, who, now moving on without both those stars. It's going to be the Cam Thomas show. The Bulls, still could trade one of their guys before that game kicks off, so we'll stay away. The Suns are going to be without now Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson sent to Brooklyn for Durant. We'll see how they do at Atlanta. The spread has only moved from +5 to +7 with those 2 key wings out. So interesting, but tough to pick there. And then the other game we're looking at, Bucks minus 6.5 at the Lakers with a 240 total. Nuggets on the road here. The first thing you look at is dramatic dip in offense. And you could say some of that lately is the fact that Joker's missed 3 of their last 6 road games. Jamal Murray has missed 4 straight road games and might very well sit tonight. He's dealing with inflammation in his knee. And so obviously it's going to hurt offensively without them. But even with Joker in there, they failed to cover in 3 straight on the road. You look at 12 road games overall, mostly with Joker in there, 110 a game. 11 threes versus 14 at home, basically. And the assist-to-turnover ratio, far, far worse. I mean, nearly 16 turnovers per game and 26 assists, whereas they lead the league in everything at home. The best offensive rating by far. And they're 1-6 against the spread as road favorites recently. So that's usually when Jokic is in there. They are still favored. That being said, I'm not as bullish on the Magic as you are. I know they gave the Nuggets trouble last time they met in Denver, and Denver was on a back-to-back there, kind of, messed around and then pulled it out late. And they did lose in Orlando. That was a long time ago, though, at this point. And Joker does have pretty bad splits his last 4 road games in Orlando. I mean, terrible by his standards. 113 offensive rating, 19.5 points, 8.5 assists. So rather than trying to figure out a 6.5 point spread, I would just take under 232. It's down 0.5 point at this point. But I mean, the Nuggets scoring since we turned to the calendar here, 107 on the road versus 124 at home. Offensive rating 16 points worse. Assist to turnover ratio, again, a mile worse. And 26th in efficiency versus by far the most efficient offense at home. The pace is also a bit slower. 21st in pace on the road in that span. And struggling from the 3-point line, which I think is the biggest key here. Orlando always struggling from the 3-point line, particularly of late. And both these teams are kind of a bit of a packet in defense. And Orlando is 7th in 3-point defense, but they give up a high percentage of points off threes. So if Denver's not hitting on the road, or I don't think Orlando's hitting anywhere, and if Orlando's not getting the free throw line, which Denver is slightly above average, denying that, I just don't think there's going to be a ton of points here. Orlando, if you look at their last 5 home games, second slowest pace in the league, and under in their last 2 because they're scoring just 103 and hitting 8 threes in those 2 games.
Yeah, it's scary to try to think of taking an over when you're talking about the Orlando Magic. I'll agree to that. I think it does depend a bit the type of game that they're playing. When they've been on the road, they really just sort of succumb to whatever it is that the other team does, and they play that way, going under and on the road a ton, except for when they're playing the Timberwolves, right? But they're going under versus the 76ers and the Heat, going over against teams that don't play defense, usually, even at home. And that Nuggets game last time, did go over as well by about a point on that spread. You talk about there weren't nearly as many guys in. But all that to say, this is in Orlando. Not that Orlando's been like world beaters at home in any category. They're pretty much, hovering around the middle of the pack with most of the key categories that you look at. They're not necessarily the worst at anything, but they're pretty much middle of the pack when it comes to any other type of the way that they're scoring, even playing defense, other than limiting points in the paint, and to a degree second chance points as well. There's not much that you like for them. They're not like necessarily creating a ton of turnovers, and they're certainly not getting out on the fast break, although they are limiting that at home as of late. So I think the way that they've been playing, look at their last 5 at home, specifically 116 defensive rating, pretty much the same offensive rating, maybe a tick lower, and then get really sort of handling business a bit more than they were on the defensive glass, not allowing second chance points, like I said, and limiting those paint points as well, which they weren't wonderful at, but they also were missing Wendell Carter Jr. for a few weeks or almost a month at one point, in which that's where they sort of dwindled, and those stats have come a long way back. I mean, Moritz Wagner as your backup center is great for being able to stretch an offense, but it's not necessarily good for limiting points in the paint. So with him, with Wendell back and their sort of full rotation of guys in there, Mo Bamba out obviously tonight, but I still think that they're able to sort of limit what Denver wants to do a bit more if Denver's not going to be hitting threes quite as well. Not saying that they won't, but you brought up all of the stats and how much better they are on the road, at home versus on the road. It's not even close, and 6 percentage points worse from deep as well. I also just like the free throw. Well, let me just start here. The free throw attempts are crucial, right? Like you talk about how dependent the Magic are on free throw attempts to be able to win games, and when they lose, they're only shooting about 24 free throws a game. When they're winning in all their wins this season, they're shooting 28, and they do get a few more calls at home, as is the expectation as well, to get to the line. But really more so, and I should also add Denver's defense in terms of like limiting free throw attempts, not bad, but not great. And over the last roughly like 15 games, it's gone from about 15th best in middle of the pack in terms of limiting free throws to actually giving up a few more of those and falling worse than 20th. So there's an opportunity for them to keep this game close to Orlando with points. But the thing that I really like is how well they're playing against the West. And there's some oddities to the fact that they are a league best when it comes to non-conference games against the spread, 14-6 versus the West. Like I said, a few oddities in there, with one where Joker's missing, and one where Ja's missing, etc., that kind of thing. But still, that's still 20 games against the West that they've covered in 14 of them, 7-2 in their last 9 against the spread versus the West. And in those 9, 116.5 a game, giving up about 116 a game, gets us right about that total. They've been playing at about 100 pace, and still 12 made threes, not good, 28 free throw attempts, very good. So that's what they've been doing against the West. I don't know how they're prepped for it, but it is sort of also relevant to the fact that they've played a ton of Eastern Conference teams in a row and then a ton of Western Conference teams in a row. So it allows for some streakiness in that sense. Right now, they're just sort of in a back and forth. They're playing both conferences equally. But like I said, most importantly, what's the style of play that they're playing against? They sort of just succumb to that. And these Nuggies are playing poorly on the road on offense and slow and choppy. So I think you can expect Orlando to come along for that ride.
Yeah, and the one thing you really can depend on with Orlando is defending the paint, right? I mean, 6th in limiting paint points, second chance points, just held the Knicks to 36 paint points, and that's heavily interior based. Also held them to 19 free throws. Nuggets don't get to the free throw line nearly as much. And where they struggle defensively, again, is 3-point defense on the road, is assists on the road, or in general. And Orlando's just not really that type of team to share the ball and really pick you apart with assists. So I just don't think either offense is going to be taken off. In fact, one offense could completely flounder here. I mean, and it was Denver's the last 2 times they've hit the road here after long home stretches. They've gone under 100 points. Last 4 times. I mean, they've lost 3 of them. They beat the Clippers, only got 115 in that one though. But it's like after they're home, the emotional letdown of that first one on the road, they just can't bring any offense with them. Again, it depends on who's sitting out. I think Jamal Murray will be out for this one. So, I mean, that is a big hit. And I just think, if they win this game, it's probably going to be with some pretty good defense and fourth quarter clutch play. But I don't really see them necessarily pulling away. I have a hard time taking the spread either way.
I actually am fine, honestly, with the 6.5. I know that's scary because comes down to it, you put Denver on the line if you're trying to come back, and you boom, Bob's your uncle, you got 7 points. But I still believe a bit more in what in Orlando, and also just believe in the fact that Denver in this type of situation just doesn't seem to kind of give a shit as much, if we're being completely honest. I mean, 4 of their last 5 as away faves, failing to cover. You talked about a few of those numbers earlier, so I'm believing in that. And if Jamal Murray doesn't play as well, it creates a bit more problems for them on offense. Obviously, only helping us a bit more on this under to hit. So,
and then the Lakers, plus 6.5 now at home. It's crept up a little bit. Total has also been bet up 2 points to 240. Russ Westbrook traded overnight, as you mentioned. And I think that at least shakes things up from an emotional standpoint. We were looking at just a depleted Lakers team that LeBron finally gets the record. It's a big night, and they still can't beat the Thunder. And that's just like really emotionally exhausting. And they host a red hot Bucks team that's got an extra day's rest on them. It would have been a spot where maybe they just fold. They definitely can't afford to fold at this point in the season. But I think getting rid of Russ, I mean, as much as he was actually helping them from a basketball standpoint, I just don't think anybody liked each other in that locker room. I just think it was a toxic environment. And we saw, at least with the Mavs, like the idea that this trade has gone through, that you've got reserves coming, that your roster is going to be much better in a few days, is enough to spark them to beat Utah without Luka or Kyrie, and then continue to play really well, even though Kyrie didn't necessarily carry them in their second game. It's the Lakers are going to be much, much better once they get those 3 guys in here. They needed depth so badly. I see people, downgrading this trade because of the pick 5 years down the line, but just like, who cares right now? Like, right now, the Lakers are much better positioned to make a run now. And I think that's going to galvanize both LeBron and AD. And I just think the Bucks are going to have to lose eventually. I mean, they're playing incredible ball here in their last 8, maybe unsustainable 3-point shooting, which we talked about going into that Portland game on Monday, but really like the matchup more against Portland, a pretty weak interior defense, but also like the under. And I think it's another situation where the Bucks probably won't continue to score at this insane rate. The pace has been slightly slowing down. I think the Lakers can slow it down more, because the last 15 games we've been on this, that the Lakers are no longer playing at that breakneck pace, especially once they got AD in there. They're playing much more of a half-court game. 9-6 to the under in that 15, but 5-2 to the under their last 7 when they're home dogs. Also covered in 4 of those 6 as home dogs here. So, I mean, you might disagree with me, but I did have the Lakers beating the Bucks earlier this season with AD going off for 44. I just think it's another spot where it's just, they're an elite team like the Nuggets, but when they face the Lakers, when they face Anthony Davis and LeBron, it's just a bit of a different story in terms of being at least a physical, tough game for them. So I'm leaning under at 240 and probably leaning the Lakers to cover. If not, maybe the plus 200 on the money line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it kind of differently. I really am. I'm looking at it because I guess I'm just still have that memory of the third quarter and the fourth quarter of that Thunder game just sort of etched in my mind, where I'm watching LeBron unable to run back on defense because he's so tired from scoring 36 points in 3 quarters, because that was what that night was about. I thought
he got that out of the way. Now he can just play basketball.
He can just play basketball, but is he not exhausted? Like, I feel tired watching this Lakers team. I feel tired watching him do what he did physically on the court, then watching him tell Anthony Davis that he loved him on the bench in a moment that seemed really odd, because AD seems like it was almost like an exit interview. Like, LeBron was talking to him like, I just want you to know I love you on your way out the door, like it's been real. And AD didn't even stand up when he made his last shot. So it just seems like there's a little bit more trouble in paradise than just the Russell Westbrook thing. That's kind of what I'm, banking on a bit. I think, I don't know if AD doesn't love him anymore, but I do know that, AD didn't really show up in that game at all. Maybe that's because it was about the King. And to the point of maybe what we talk about a little bit more in player props, rather than even considering like a LeBron under necessarily, although his props are high for someone that I don't know if he's going to be playing the whole game tonight, partly because I do think the Bucks are capable for a blowout here. But maybe AD does do a little bit more, and like he did last game against this Bucks team, knowing how crucial it is that they have an inside presence and somebody that can really, be at least sort of the anchor of a defense while Giannis is running full steam at it, and then also box out a guy like Brolo when he has to. So I think he's ready for that challenge. I hope he is. I say that, but I don't know for sure. I do see this as an opportunity for the Bucks kind of licking their chops a bit, is kind of how I see it. And I think the 6 points is reasonable in this one. I think it could get out of hand, which is also why I kind of think that the Lakers might not be able to get to their props in terms of LeBron and some of his stuff. But I think Middleton playing is a big deal. And that's kind of what I was writing down earlier before we were talking here, that, he's played 15 games and he's been around for these last 8 that they've won in a row. And in the 15 games he's played versus the 39 that he hasn't, they've scored 120 with him and 112 without him. They get a few more boards a game. Their splits are way better, including 48% from the field versus 45, and then 40% from deep. They get a couple more free throws a game. He hasn't even been doing much in the last 7 that he's played. It's just 15, 5 boards, 4 points, normal like role player stuff, but it's the threat of him being there. It's another big body playing defense on the wing, which outside of him, on the wing after that, they get a little bit smaller. Even obviously Drew's fine, but then after that, they do get a little bit smaller there. Helpful to have him back there. So their defense in the last 8, not awesome. I don't like the fact that they've given up a ton of points to some decently bad offensives. I think it was a little bit too close in certain games as well. But in this one, like, I do think it's a situation where they have an opportunity to really put the clamps on the Lakers and kind of run on them. And the Lakers have scored and won by running fast and playing at a fast pace. Maybe, you mentioned that AD coming back does help the slower pace. But that's also why I don't think they can win. Even when AD's in there, when the second unit comes on and now you've got Russell Westbrook on it, that's where your pace increases, and that's the only way that they were really getting points at times. And say what you want about Russ, he was a sort of, break glass for emergency bucket kind of guy when it just came to use your athleticism to out-athleticize everybody and get to the rim, right? So I think that without that, they are going to miss that tonight. It does help the under, especially because Russ doesn't exactly give it all on defense. But I do think that for the Bucks tonight, like, they're in a prime position to be able to cover 6 points.
It really helps the under. Yeah, you're definitely making my point for me there with the no Russ on the second unit. Thank you. Also, you said the Bucks are playing not overwhelming you with defense. Their defense has been absolutely incredible in the last 5. How are you both first and second in opponents' 2-point shooting and second in opponents' 3-point shooting, third in assists allowed, sixth in fast break points? They're just denying everything. The reason that these games are looking crazy is because it's a 109 pace overall in their last 3 road games, but it did slow down against Portland. I think the Lakers, because of that exhaustion you're talking about, definitely need to understand that they can't speed it up with this team. And the last 2 meetings with the Bucks have gone under after 6 straight overs when they were kind of playing more of a freewheeling style. They have kind of taken that approach that this needs to slow down. So, actually, it's the reverse, isn't it? It's 2 overs after 6 straight unders. Yeah, because that is the trend that we've seen recently. But look, I'm thinking it's more about the Lakers. 5 of their last 8 unders at home. I mentioned the home underdog numbers and just the pace slowing down a little bit more, and the second unit slowing down more without Russ to lean under. But yeah, it should be just interesting to watch. I mean, we don't have to bet these ones on the trade deadline if you are worried about how they're going to come out. But do check out our trade deadline show to talk about how we're going to attack this the rest
Definitely,
of the
yeah, that's going to be a fun one. And I would just throw one more out there to you said I made your point. You're also making my point in the sense that if this game goes a little bit slower, like I said, I don't think that's good for the Lakers. I don't think they can play at that pace. The Bucks are, they want to play at that 109 pace as well, but I think that they'll do it better than the Lakers. And that even if the Lakers try to slow this one down, it's not in their favor. As in their wins, they play at they get one more possession per 100 than in their losses, playing a little bit slower when they lose. So, Nate, let's go ahead and jump into our first prop, or show favorite, I should say, Drew Holiday.
Yeah, and he hasn't really flashed a ton of usage this season, except for that 3-game or 5-game stretch where Giannis was out. He was on fire, and then he's kind of, slowed down with the usage again, but still 20 points per game, 8 assists per game on the road his last 10 here, 27% usage rate for Drew. So that's 28 points and assists, and we're looking at 26.5 as a prop for points and assists. Against the Lakers team that gives up the most points per game to point guards, 8th most assists to point guards, 2nd most threes. He's averaging 20 and 8 against them, again, in his last 5, and playing heavy minutes. I do expect this game to be kind of close, and Josh thinks, the Bucks are going to blow them out. I'm not as sure. I think the Lakers are going to be a little bit galvanized by the absence of Russell Westbrook. But in any case, Holiday should be handling more facilitation here with no Joe Ingles, and Chris Middleton still ways back away from being fully back. His last 9 with no Ingles, Holiday's averaging 24 points per game, 8.2 assists. That includes 35 and 11 against Indy and 24 and 11 against Miami. Granted, no Giannis in that game either. But yeah, we're talking about a Lakers team that gives up a lot of production to point guards. And Holiday, I think it's kind of a game where he slips through the cracks, really, while the Titans are battling there, Giannis and AD and stuff. And it's just like, oh, look at that, Drew Holiday coming in clutch. So that's my take for that one.
No, I'm with it. Have some confidence. I believe in you in this one too. We definitely want Drew to continue to get the assist there, but I do think he'll continue to sort of play second scorer for right now, especially while Chris Middleton, he's still on somewhat of a minutes restriction, still only averaging about 15 a game over his last 7. So I think there's a good reason to think the usage for Drew Boo will still be pretty high for us. So going to go to an under in our second one here, Nate, and that is Nikola Vucevic. Minus 120 on DK for him to get less than 21 points tonight. You could throw in the rebounds as well, 32.5 points and rebounds. If you go under that, it's actually minus 106 on FanDuel. I think I would throw that in there for the extra less than 13 rebounds as well. But they're playing the Nets tonight, a Nets team that is going to look way different without Kevin Durant out there as well. Although Cam Thomas seems unstoppable in his last 7 versus Brooklyn. And by the way, Nick Claxton also looking like a complete madman on defense, playing really well over his last 5 with an individual defensive rating of 108. But Vooch in his last 7 versus the Nets overall, 12 points per game, 10.6 boards there on 36% from the field and just a 97 individual offensive rating. He is hot over his last 3, so you have to have a little bit of chutzpah, as we say, to take an under on him right now. But 24 a game and 13 boards. 2 of those were at home, not on the road like this one. And if you look at those 3, we're talking about the Spurs without Jakob Poeltl, the inside eater, Blazers without Nurk, and then Memphis when the Bulls played without DeMar. And that's why, there was a much bigger usage for Vooch in that one. His road splits so much better, at home so far than on the road, but he still gets less than 20 a game and about 13 boards there. The Nets in general this year, they're much better rebounding team at home than they were. They're not great. It's a little bit scary to think about it because they're a little bit weak down low. But like we were saying, Vooch also, I don't know that you can depend on him to be the one to get those points down low. And I believe a little bit more in Nick Claxton, what he's been doing in that center role since, basically since Kyrie just decided he was done with this team.
Yeah, I'm a little interested in the Nets to win this game, too. I mean, I feel like there's still a shoe to drop. I feel like the Bulls are going to trade somebody before 3 p.m. here. So we'll see, maybe Vooch will be playing without Levine or DeRozan, and his usage will spike because of that. But, I mean, the Nets have clearly a great game plan in place to deal with him. 12 points per game in 7 meetings, 7 of his 8 since he joined Chicago. And Jacques Vaughn was the guy crafting up those game plans, and now he's the head guy. So I think they'll keep him under 20 points regardless, and we should see a pretty competitive game from the new look Nets. This is actually my favorite bet here. It's just not a big enough name, I guess, to lead with. But Aaron Gordon, 7 rebounds at plus 115. In a matchup with his former team. Love that former team theory. Averaging just over 7 boards and 19 points per game in 4 against Orlando since he was traded a couple of years ago. And that includes a really efficient 24.7 rebound game just last month against them. But the real reason I like it, is I think Jamal Murray's going to sit. In his last 3 without Murray, his usage has gone up 6%, 26.5%. Minutes have gone up to 33.5 from 29.5. And, so you want to tack on points and rebounds, 24.5, sure. But I think the rebounds is just too low He's averaging nearly 9 boards per game on the road since we turned to January here versus just 6 at home. And that's because the Nuggets are worse offensively on the road. They're playing choppier games, and Orlando is exactly the type of team that's going to play choppy. They're 25th in offensive rating at home. They're a very poor offensive team, and I don't think they're going to do great in this matchup necessarily. So enough board opportunities here for Gordon. And when Murray's out, he's often, one of the prime options for Jokic to just find him cutting and get him going.
Totally, yeah. Once Murray's out, kind of turn to Gordon and maybe some Bruce Brown stuff for those cutters off of Jokic, like you're saying. But yeah, Gordon a pretty good play here. 6.5 rebounds. I mean, plus 115, that's what it's about. Like, I would love it if it was at 5.5, but those odds at 6.5, I think you got to feel pretty good about the boards in that sense. Not sure what the points will be like tonight for either of these teams, as we expect it to be kind of ugly. But that just enhances the opportunity for rebounds as well. So with some plus odds there, I think that's my favorite bet with you as well. We were looking for an under. We were looking for something in this Suns and Hawks game because this could go one of two ways, right? Like CP3 and DeAndre Ayton could come out and, oh, by the way, Devin Booker's not playing. That's a huge sort of impact here, right? That's going to have a big effect on what we're talking about here. But are they going to fold? Are they going to be angry? Or are they going to come out and be like, not necessarily fold, but are they going to come out and sort of be like, we're ready to go and we're pumped? Or are they going to come out and sort of just be like, I can't wait till these guys get here and be a little bit distracted? I'm not totally sure. Either way, the prop for CP3 is very high. And I think that it's in part due. Obviously, Booker is not in. He's got a few more points per game when Book's out this season. But I think it's also high because I think they do think the Suns are sort of elated and, walking on sunshine. I didn't mean to do that. But in his last 10, 17.5 points is way too high for CP3. So I'm going under on that, minus 106 on FanDuel for it. If you want to throw the points and the rebounds and assists in there as well, the super high 30.5 points, rebounds and assists combined, minus 104 on FanDuel, would like under that as well, please. In his last 10, we're talking about 14 points a game. He only went over that points prop 3 different times there. And in his last 4 total, 9 points a game, 7 assists per game in 32 minutes. So, just not nearly as much scoring for him. Atlanta is allowing less than 8 assists to point guards over their last 15 games, playing a little bit better defense, and definitely DeJounte stepping it up in that sense. And in his last 5 versus Atlanta specifically, CP3 just 11 points per game and 7 assists in that time frame as well. And even like I said, with Booker out, he's got 15 a game, 2 more points than he's averaging this season when Booker's not playing, or when Booker is playing, I should say. But 15 a game still is not even close enough to get you, to that 18 points that he needs tonight. So I just don't see it happening for him as I haven't been able to see it for a while now.
Yeah, because Paul's just not a scorer at this point in his career. That's not his primary look. So if the Suns are competitive in this game and do get galvanized by the eventual arrival of Durant, I don't think it's going to be because CP3's, putting up 25 and 15 and Ayton's going nuts either. I think it's because guys like Dwayne Washington out of nowhere are like, oh, okay, it's my time to shine. Damian Lee, where we saw those random pop-up games when everybody was out. And just the supporting cast is enough. And because Atlanta's so freaking weird and there's no way we can try to predict how they're going to handle this situation. So, but I think there are a lot of scenarios where Paul goes under the points and probably under the PRA too, which is good odds at FanDuel, 30.5 total there. I don't think he's going to be rebounding much against this Hawks team either.
Right. The only reason to be scared of the points, rebounds, and assists is all of a sudden he's got 15 assists or something like that. And then you're like, damn, that's a little bit scarier. But still, the points, I think he goes well enough under 18. I don't even think he can really get to another prop combo that involves the points. So that is all the time we have for you today. One of the more interesting 4-game slates because it's coming on trade deadline with some madness for sure. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Check out the other couple game videos we have up for you today. Also going to have that trade deadline video and what that means in terms of the futures markets here in the NBA. So until we see you next, happy betting.